Greater love has no one than this. And a man lay down his life for his friends. These words of Jesus are very deep and very profound. In fact, growing up as a kid, I always had a specific picture in my mind when I thought about this Bible verse. I imagined some person who was in their home with their family, and for whatever reason, a burglar breaks in one night. And you kind of have this picture play out in your mind as the father steps in front of his kids and his wife. Greater love has no one than this, than a man lays down his life for his friends. Self-sacrifice is something that we as people resonate with very deeply. It is something that we want to be remembered for. It's something that we want to be known for. But I have to admit that as I look back on my reflection on this command of Jesus, this call of Jesus, I realized that I only understood a little piece of it as a kid. Turn with me in your Bibles to John chapter 15. And as we unpack these two simple verses, I believe we will come to understand the significance of what we are about to do much more fully than before. John chapter 15. Jesus has just been talking about the principle of abiding in him. And as we abide in him, he, as the vine, will bring fruit out of the branches. But in verse 12, he adds a command that is not new. He has said it before and he will say it again before he is done with John. But in verse 12 he says, "This is my commandment, that you love" who? One another as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, than to lay down one's life for his friends. You see, Jesus intended that particular phrase to come right after love one another as I have loved you. Has Jesus died at this point in his ministry yet? Not yet. Instead, Jesus is talking to his disciples and he's saying, I want you to love one another in the way that I have been loving you up to this time, and greater love has no one than this, than that he lay down his life for his friends. Now, does this text include everything up to dying for someone? Yes, I believe it does. Jesus is going to go to that ultimate extreme in just a few hours after this statement. He is getting ready to go to the cross. But Jesus is saying in this point that laying down your life is not so much as how your life ends as in how it is lived. This is something that we already understand on a personal level. Have you ever heard someone say this statement, "It's my life," just about the time when they're wanting to do something that someone else says that's not a good idea? It's my life. I can do whatever I want. It's my right as a living human being with free will to make my own choices and to do whatever I want. Jesus' invitation to us, greater love has no one than this, than a man lay down his life for his friends, is a call to abandon the "it's my life" mindset. Jesus is saying, I want you to realize something, that I am calling you to lay down your life for others. Just in the same way as I have laid down my life for you. Jesus is bringing to mind a concept of someone who has the right to lots of things, who gives up that right so that he can help someone else. In fact, this statement, greater love has no one than this, than a man lay down his life for his friends, is very similar to Jesus' statement when he says, if anyone wants to come after me, let him take up his cross daily and follow me. You see, the laying down of one's life in death can only happen once. Once you've died, you're gone. But the full impact of a life that is lived in laying it down is so much greater than just a single act. And so Jesus is calling us as his disciples to embrace this reality, to lay down our lives for one another. This is the context in which John 13, the passage we are looking at today, is framed. You see, Jesus has been talking to his disciples about this reality since the beginning of his ministry. He has been making rather uncomfortable statements like, if you want to be great in the kingdom of heaven, then you have to become the servant. In fact, Luke 22 tells us that during this Last Supper, before Jesus dies, the disciples are still arguing about who is going to be the greatest in this kingdom that Jesus is going to set up. You see, the disciples have not yet come to a point where they are willing to lay down their life. Instead, they are hoping that Jesus will make their life bigger. Maybe Jesus can enrich my life. Maybe Jesus can make me greater. And as this argument is going on all around them, they are here in the upper room. They have gone, and as is the custom, they have come to this upper room for the Passover experience. But while this experience is taking place, obviously the owner of the house has forgotten something, because there was a very, very important custom that was to take place whenever people came to a dinner where there was something significant going on. It was customary for the servants of that person to go and wash the feet of the guests. Why? Well, because roads were a little bit worse than they are today. Yes, they were usually dirt. Maybe if you were on a Roman road, you might have some stone, and you've got a nice bumpy road as you go along. The problem is you're sharing this road with donkeys and sheep and goats and every other thing that's been along since you name it. And all of that stuff gets mixed up in the road, and it doesn't matter if you had a bath this morning, you're wearing sandals today. And so by the time you got to that place, wherever it was, your feet were a mess. A mess that no one wants to deal with. And so here is Jesus at this Passover meal with the disciples. And I want you to see what is going through his mind in John chapter 13. Because this statement, we haven't actually read it yet, is probably the most important passage in this whole section. It's John chapter 13, verse 3. John chapter 13, verse 3. And it says, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given what? All things into his hands, and that he had come from God and was going to God. I want you to look at this verse for just a moment. What is John saying about Jesus? He is saying Jesus is fully aware right now, even before he's died, that he is the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. God has given him everything. The Father has put everything into his hands. Who is the only person in this room who's actually worth anything? It's Jesus. Jesus knowing that reality, that he is the creator of the world, that he is the one who speaks this universe into existence, he does the totally unexpected. Verse 4 says, he rose from the supper and laid aside his garments, took a towel and girded himself. What are you doing, Jesus? What are you doing? Greater love has no man than this, that he lay down his life for his friends. What has Jesus just done? He has laid his life aside for his friends. His life as the king of the universe, his life as the master of reality, his life as the one who deserves all praise, all glory, all service, and he is serving. Now, this incredible disconnect is not lost on the disciples. Because verse 5 says, after that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet, to wipe them with a towel with which he was girded. And then in verse 6, when Jesus finally gets to Peter, Peter has the nerve to say what everyone else is thinking. Simon Peter said to him, Lord, are you washing my feet? There's a problem here, Jesus. We were just figuring out which of us was the greatest after you. We were trying to settle who should be washing feet today, since there wasn't a servant. The one person that shouldn't be doing it is you. The one person that has no business doing it is you. And Jesus responds to him and says, what I am doing you do not understand now, but you will know after this. Peter said to him, you shall never wash my feet. And Jesus said to him, if I do not wash you, you have no part with me. Simon Peter said to him, oh Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head. Peter may be a little bit hot-headed and quick to speak, but he does want to be with Jesus. He doesn't want to be separated from Jesus. But there's a problem. There's a problem that Jesus has just identified, and that is, if you want to belong to him, then he has to serve you. You see, greater love has no one than this, than he lay down his life for his friends. Jesus recognizes that without his laying down his life, they have no life. There is no life for them unless Jesus serves them. And so Peter, wanting to be part of Jesus and wanting to be part of his experience, wants to be washed head to toe. And Jesus says he who has bathed needs only to wash his feet to be completely clean. Jesus is here hinting at the symbol of baptism. Once you have been cleansed, the need is not to be totally cleansed all the time. You need to deal with the dirt that accumulates. You need to deal with the reality that comes. But the foot washing service that Jesus is doing for the disciples right now is a little mini baptism. It's a little mini cleansing. I know you were clean, but you've picked up some dirt on the road. Life has been a little messy, and so I'm cleansing you again. So when he had washed their feet, verse 12, taken his garments and sat down again, he said, do you know what I have done to you? At this point, all of the disciples are saying, no, I don't get it at all. Jesus says, "You call me teacher and Lord, and you say well, for so I am. If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet." Jesus is saying, I have given you an example that you should do as I have done to you. You see, you were all too busy saving your own lives to realize that I was calling you to lay them down. And so, I have laid mine down first. And I'm doing this for you. I'm doing it for you, not because he needs it for him. Jesus doesn't need to learn humility. The evidence of that is with how willing he was to do what he just did. It doesn't bother him to wash your dirty feet. He's willing to lay aside his life for that. The problem is that in the lives and hearts of his followers, they have an issue with washing dirty feet. I'm sorry, Jesus, but that person's junk is just too messy. You want me to deal with that? You want me to work with that? And Jesus is saying, yeah, you call me teacher and Lord, and you're right, because that's what I am. If I then, your Lord and teacher, have taken off my dignity, my robes, my priority, and put it aside, can you do it too? Can you do it too? I have given you an example that you should do as I have done to you. Most assuredly, I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master, nor is he who is sent greater than the one who sent him. If you know these things, then blessed are you if you do them. Lots of people ask the question, especially if they're from other churches, why do you Adventists do this whole foot washing thing? After all, isn't it kind of disgusting to go and wash someone's feet? Yes, but not nearly as much as it was back in the 1st century AD. The point is not that it's disgusting. The point is that I have in my own heart the need to make a decision that I have to make not once but every day, and that is to follow Jesus in laying down my life, my dignity, my priority for others. Jesus says, when you are participating in this, you are like me, because you aren't thinking about yourself. You're thinking about serving. So as we follow Jesus' example, we do this for one another. We do this to recognize two important realities. The first one is that you are not actually washing away anyone's sins. We are recognizing what Jesus told Peter, if I do not wash you, you have no part with me. That is a universal truth. It is Christ who is washing away sin, not us. But we also are doing this so that we, through surrendering our own pride, our own dignity, can embrace Christ's servant heart. Greater love has no one than this, but that a man lay down his life for his friends. And so I'd like to make that invitation to all of us here today, to embrace Jesus' example and participate in this valuable symbol of laying aside our lives, laying aside ourself for the one who laid aside all for us. So we are going to take this time in the next few minutes. I'd encourage you to find someone that you can serve. We have several different areas where this is going to be taking place. If you are a couple and would like to do it as a couple, then we'll have the fellowship hall downstairs that is available for that. If you are a lady and you have another lady and you want to serve them, then the library just here off of the sanctuary is available. And if you are a single man who is wanting to serve another man, then down in the juniors room just down the stairs is where that will be taking place. And once we have participated in this example of humility with Jesus, we'll come back together for the Lord's Supper.